I got pregnant at 14. I didn't see this man as a paedophile. I saw this man as was, my boyfriend. We're talking about a really, really dangerous person, which has now gone on to be one of the most dangerous people in the UK. There was occasions when he was even trying to if I was, trying to get away from him. 1,400 children had been groomed, abused, raped, tortured, trafficked, some even murdered. A majority of the offenders were Pakistani Muslim men. My rapist, who I have a child to, is in prison for 35 years, but yet Rotherham Council has invited him into my child's life.
Hi guys, this is SaharTV, and in today's video I got the amazing opportunity to interview the amazing Sammy Woodhouse. Sammy, if you don't know, was the main whistleblower for the grooming gang scandal in Rotherham. Why? Because she was one of the victims. Her story will blow your mind, so please don't forget to subscribe to her channel down below and subscribe to mine as well. Thank you for being here, and let's get to the video. Sammy, hello.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing incredibly well. Thank you for asking.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for agreeing to be here. I think, is this your biggest interview on the biggest platform, would you say?
To be honest, I have no idea. I've done so many interviews over the years. So I've been an activist now for about 13 years, and I've done interviews all over the world. However, I have taken a step back from media interviews and podcasts over the last few years. So it is probably the biggest one I've done in the last few years.
Beautiful. It's my pleasure to be that stepping stone for you, because I'm sure people are going to love you, and I'm sure you also have a YouTube channel, I'm assuming.
Yes, I just started one. I think it was last week actually. So yeah, I'm just getting a YouTube channel up going, but I am on all social media such as X and Instagram. I would say that X is my main platform.
Beautiful, beautiful. So hopefully this is going to help you get some more subscribers. Guys, if you're watching, subscribe to her. I'm going to leave all the information down below. Sammy, please, first of all, tell us about yourself. Tell us from the beginning, and how did you get to the place that you're at today?
Okay, so I grew up in a town called Rotherham, which is in the north of England, and we are a small town. And as growing up, I was from an ordinary working class family. I lived with both my parents, so mother, father, and I've got two older sisters. Now, as a child, I was very confident. I was bubbly. I had lots of friends. I was good at school, but I was a very active child, and my dream was to be a dancer. So as a child, I was involved in all different kinds of sports, whether it be cross country, dancing, football. But dancing is what I love to do the most. And I would travel all around the UK, with my teammates, competing for our little gold medals. And I love doing that. And it gave me a real focus as well. Now, when I got to about 12 years old, the dance team was no more and the team folded. And, looking back, this was kind of, I suppose, a real significant moment in my life, because I no longer, had this focus, this really strict routine, because I was training, every day. And I suppose I got a little lost, and I started going out on the streets with my friends. And I was on a local shop just after my 14th birthday. And I was with one of my best friends, and a silver sports car started to drive up the street. And a man got out of that car and he started talking to my friend. Now, his name was Arshad Hussain, but he was known as Mad Ash. But he started talking to my friend, and he asked her if, we wanted to go for a drive in the car. Now, I knew his friend a little bit. So he didn't feel quite like a stranger to me, because, my friend knew him as well. So we got into the car to go for a drive. Now, of course, we had no idea, but that was going to be the moment that would change my life forever. And I would go on to be mentally, sexually and physically abused for several years. Now, when I met Arshad Hussain, I suppose it became very instant of what is called the grooming process. So he was 24 years old. He was 10 years older than me at this point. And this is going back in 1999. So he's 10 years older than me. He was very good looking. You know, he was dressed very smart. He didn't fit your usual description of what a paedophile or a sex offender or rapist would, you know, kind of fit. So for me growing up, I was taught that a paedophile or a rapist would be, you know, some old man in a flat that would be watching children in the playground, you know, masturbating, or somebody that would pull up in a van and kidnap you and offer you sweets and you never see your parents again. And where I lived in Rotherham, you know, those kind of things didn't happen. That's the kind of things you see in a movie. So, you know, it was very hard to kind of recognize what was happening to me at that point. Now, I just want to kind of give you and the viewers just a little bit of an insight of what the grooming process actually is. Now, you know, some people will have only just heard of the words such as grooming or grooming gangs. But grooming is the, I suppose, the manipulation part, the psychological part of the abuse. So first of all, he came into my life and he found out everything there was to know about me. You know, who I was, my family, my friends, what school I went to, what kind of music I liked, what kind of movies I was into. And he paid me, you know, a lot of positive attention. He told me I was beautiful, I was funny, I was kind. You know, we would do, you know, kind of normal things like we'd go out for food and we'd go to the cinema. And once he got all of that information from me and all that knowledge, he then took me into his world, which of course is very different to mine, very dark, very violent. And once you're inside it, it's very difficult to get out of it. Now, my parents, you know, of course, recognized that this was happening. Instantly, they wasn't happy. You know, of course, he wasn't. There's this man that's known to be very dangerous within Rotherham and surrounding areas. He's just come out of prison and he's 10 years older than me. So my parents reported this to the police, and the police came out and they said, well, Sammy's making, you know, a life choice. You know, she's kind of making her own decisions. And they kind of just left my family, you know, to deal with it. Now, as well, what I think is important just to let your viewers know is that this wasn't only happening to me. This was happening to everyone around me. You know, there was, you know, children involved with older men. So it was quite the norm. But I started going missing for days, weeks, and even months at a time. And I was everywhere. I was in hotels, B&Bs, and I was even living in his family's home as well. Now, what I found out later on is that he was married, he had children. He did actually tell me that he was divorced, which was a lie. So I was even introduced, you know, to his mother, his brothers, his children as well. But I started going missing for long periods of time from school as well. So I missed out on a lot of my education. And I first became pregnant when I was 14 years old. And yeah, you know, I was a baby myself.
Just a
And,
second, before you continue, his family didn't question for a second why he's bringing a 14-year-old girl into his house, into their house? For a second, they didn't question it?
No, the only person that seemed to really kind of didn't want anything to do with me was his dad. So even though his dad was aware of me, we wasn't on talking terms. And when my parents obviously found out, they actually went to his family home and he told the entire family, you know, everything what was happening. So yeah, there was only really his dad that had an issue. And then one of his brothers started to have a little bit of an issue because he said I was bringing too much attention from the authorities. So, but I got pregnant at 14 and I was forced to have an abortion. And I'll be honest, that's not something I wanted to do. I wanted to keep my baby. Now, you know, I did, as I said earlier, I didn't see this man as a paedophile. What I saw this man as was, you know, my boyfriend. I thought we was together in a relationship and that we would go on to get married and have more children. So even at like 14 and 15 years old, he bought me a ring and we was actually engaged. But my parents said that they was going to use the DNA from my baby to prosecute him. because at this point I wasn't recognising that I was a victim of exploitation, and I didn't want to press any charges against him. I just thought, my parents had just kind of been really difficult. He told me that he thought my dad was racist and my mum was just going along with it. He was manipulating me into turning me against my family and also my friends, which is what a lot of paedophiles do. And they do that to isolate you, so it makes it more difficult for you to come forward and to get out of the exploitation. But my parents found things, really difficult, and they kept reporting it to the police, to social care, and they put me on something what's called a Section 20. So that meant I was going to go into care, but they would still hold full parental rights over me. And they thought that by putting me into care with having all these professionals around, that it would keep me safer. Now, that actually backfired on my parents, because when I got placed into care, they said he could have full contact with me, but there was conditions. So I had to meet him at the top of the road from the foster carers. I also had to be back for 10 p.m. and they wanted me to go to school, which I was now on a part-time table because I was just missing that much education. So I was only allowed to take classes such as my maths, English and science.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but, kind of his behaviour towards me really started to change. So, when I first met him, he was like Prince Charming. He was lovely. He was kind. He as I said, he'd pay me compliments and buy me all these nice things. And then he started to become really, really controlling, really aggressive, really violent. And, my life just completely changed. And I started to change, as a child, as a person. And, my social worker, my foster parents met him. So, you had all these people that were meant to, protect, that were getting paid to protect me. And they actually wasn't. So he was even invited on holiday with the foster carer and myself, and he left the holiday early because he actually robbed the hotel that was, on the residence that we were staying in. So he was involved in all different types of crimes. So he wasn't just raping and exploiting children. He was involved in drug dealing, money laundering, stealing cars. We're talking about a really, really dangerous person, which has now gone on to be one of the most dangerous people in the UK. But he started to become more and more violent towards me, and there was occasions when he was even trying to kill me if I was, trying to get away from him. So there was one occasion where he dragged me by my hair into the car at the top of my foster carer street, and he started speeding towards the top of the street, and he drove through 2 parked cars and into a church because he said if he couldn't have me, then no one could have me. And I got rushed into hospital. I was pregnant for the second time at this point, so I was 15 years old. And but the authorities said that I was allowed to keep my second child and that they wouldn't prosecute him. But me and the baby was fine. We got discharged from hospital. And, that kind of pattern just kept on happening. So it was like a daily routine for me to wake up. I'd go and meet him. We'd get in an argument. He'd beat me up. He'd rape me. I'd cry. He'd tell me, it was my fault. I make him do it. And I really started to blame myself. And, I was listening to these words, what he was saying, that it was my fault and I should make him angry. But then I'd go home, I'd cry myself to sleep, and I'd wake up the next day and it just happened again and again. And I knew I needed to break out, from this cycle that I was in. But there was another occasion when we was in the car and he said he was going to drive us off what I describe as a hilltop. It's a place in Rotherham and it overlooks all of Rotherham. And he was speeding towards the edge and he slammed the brakes on. He dragged me out the car, and I was actually physically sick. And I was that scared. I actually wet myself, and he took me to the edge of this hill. And I honestly felt like that was the moment my life was going to end. I thought he was going to chuck me off it. And he placed me back into the car and had sex with me as though nothing had happened at all. And I remember just laying there and I was crying, but it was a silent cry. And I just felt like a dead body on a slab in a morgue, and I just had this constant pain there all the time. And I knew it was from him. I knew I had to get away from him. I just didn't know how, to do that. And I saw a lot of corruption, from the police, from social care. So, for children like me, we wasn't just going up against him and, his gang. We was going up against the police, against the council. The Home Office actually knew about my case as well. And one of the Home Office researchers was actually instructing professionals, and we've got the files of this now, saying not to get him a court order because it might upset him. So, it kind of felt very, very lonely in going through what I was going through. But he got sent to prison. He kidnapped somebody and stabbed them 12 times with a screwdriver. So that gave me the, short space of time, because he only got sent to prison for about 6 months, even though, he'd
For
done
6 months after stabbing somebody for 12 times?
Yeah, and kidnapping them as well. Yeah.
Did he kill them by stabbing them?
No, he was alive. So he was a drug runner. He was running drugs for him. In fact, he's just recently gone back to prison, actually. But no, he was alive. So that gave me the kind of short space of time to start and build relationships with my family. Now, as I said, I saw a lot of corruption from police. I'm talking about things like police officers were passing in information if people was coming forward. I saw, PC Greaves buying drugs from him, and one of the officers, PC Hassan Ali, he came to my family's home and asked me out on a date, so there was just some crazy things going on by police. And there was even an occasion when they made a no prosecution deal with him. So a man by the name of Jahangir Akhtar, who then went on to be the deputy leader of Rotherham Council and a Labour politician, and the police officer PC Hassan Ali, went on to make a deal with him. So on one occasion when he abducted me, they said, if you bring her back and hand her over at a petrol station, we will allow you to walk free. And that is what happened. So he dropped me off at the petrol station and he went on his way. He was never arrested. He was never charged. He went on to rape, abduct, torture many other children and people, and was, at that point, never held to account. But when he got locked up, my focus now was on my baby. I was heavily pregnant. And I was heavily pregnant when he came out of prison, and I bumped into him in Rotherham town centre, and he was with his brother and a friend, and he was trying to talk me around, but I stayed adamant and I didn't want to speak to him. So he grabbed me by my throat on the top floor balcony, and he was hanging me off the balcony. And
the police did nothing?
Yeah, absolutely nothing whatsoever. So his brother actually dragged him off me. And he was screaming at me. He kicked over my son's pushchair. He was spitting in my face. He was calling my son a black bastard, saying he was going to set him on fire and watch him burn. So I grabbed the pushchair and I just started running. And I got to a phone box. And I phoned my sister so she could hear everything, what's going on, because he chased me. And again, his brother pulled him away. I still to this day don't remember how I actually got home, but I know that I was sat in my parents' home and we called the police, and the police officer came out. It was called PC Safra, and he took my statement. I told him everything, and I'd still at this point not recognised I was actually a victim of exploitation. But what I was saying to him was, this is my ex-boyfriend. He's been really violent towards me. I don't want him to see my son, unless it's kind of in a safe environment, etc. And he said, well, what do you expect? He's got every right to do that to you because you've stopped him from seeing his son. And my dad went so mad. He stood up and he was shouting at him. I actually thought my dad was going to hit him. And my dad was screaming at him and he's saying, get out my house, get out of my house. And the police officer apologised and continued to take the statement, which was just a complete waste of time because, again, with my statement, with DNA from his son, with witnesses, with CCTV, with damning amounts of evidence, they refused to even go and speak to him. So what I pretty much had to do was I had to go into hiding, and that wasn't with the help of the authorities, because the social services actually closed my case. They said I came from a decent family. I no longer needed the support. And I honestly think that if I would have had, some kind of therapy and help processing what I was going through at that point, my life could have gone on to be very, very different. So I cut myself off from absolutely everybody, because he was targeting everybody to try and find me and, to try and get to where I was. And then some years after, he got shot and he was paralysed and was in a wheelchair, and him and some members of his family moved out of Rotherham, which kind of meant I could relax a little bit at that point.
Sammy,
and then
if he was dealing with drugs, didn't you think it would be a good thing to incriminate him like this, by talking about his drugs, by talking about what he does, getting him into prison that way? Have you thought about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, at that point when I was making a statement to police, I was willing to tell them everything. And, the truth is, they had enough evidence at that point. They could have done a victimless prosecution. They didn't even need me to, kind of go into court or whatever, because there was just that much evidence. And of course, there was other people coming forward and trying to report him as well. They could have got him from the drugs, from the money laundering, from stealing cars. There was so much evidence there, what they just turned a blind eye to. But my mother actually went on to suddenly die just weeks after he got shot as well. So, kind of at that time, there was just so much going on. And I was so close to my mum, even though he broke down all the relationships with my family, the relationship with my mum stayed very much alive. And, we had a great relationship. But, through life, I went really struggling with things, with my mental health, with relationships, because, as I say, I could never process what actually happened to me. But I'm going to jump forward a little bit to how I started to expose Rotherham. And I was about 27 years old at this point. So this is about 2012. And my sister phoned me and she said, I want you to speak to someone about everything what's happened, to you in your life, and about everything what's happened in Rotherham. Now, at this point, I was still getting threats from him and his family. So at that point, I didn't want to speak to anyone. I just wanted all of this to go away. But I was in a petrol station and there was a newspaper article, and it said something along the lines of 54 girls had been befriended by 3 Asian brothers in Rotherham. Now, it was very important how that was worded, because if it would have said 54 girls sexually exploited by these 3 men, I didn't know what sexual exploitation was. But I got the newspaper and I instantly knew it was about him and his 2 brothers, because they were so prominent in our town. And it's no exaggeration when I say they was running that town. They had these professionals, these politicians, these police officers in their back pocket. They was paying them off. And I started to kind of recognise, well, actually, this is about me. I am now a victim of exploitation. And my mental health was so severe, I just trying to kill myself, because of how mentally unwell I actually was. But when I was coming to terms with recognising that I was a victim, I just felt like I was in such this dark hole, this dark place. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I blamed myself. I started thinking about everything what my family had gone through, my son. How am I going to tell my son this? His dad is a rapist, all his male members in his family are rapists. His mum was raped. That's how he was born. I had no idea what to tell my son. And I met a support worker. I'm actually working with her now on the rape gang inquiry. She's called Natalie Enderby. But she started to help me process everything what I was going through. And so did a social worker called Nikki. Now, if you look at my story, I could sit here all day telling you about the negligence and the bad things that they did. But, you know, this was a good opportunity for me because I got some really good professionals that was going to help me process everything. And Nikki said to me, I want you to come forward to the police and tell them what's happened. So I said, okay, and I did it. And there was an officer called Diane Garner that came to see me. And I recognised Diane Garner from one of the officers, you know, of when it was happening to me. So I knew that I couldn't really trust her. But I said to her, I want you to go away and see what evidence there is to support me in what I'm saying, because I want to come forward. So she went away and she came back with an officer called, I think it was Lee. And they said, right, there's only one piece of evidence to support you. They didn't want to use the DNA evidence from his son, which would prove, you know, that I was being abused. They said they couldn't put anything safety-wise in place to protect me. You know, so I was pretty much kind of left with absolutely nothing. But what they didn't know is that I was recording them on my mobile phone. So what I said to them was, okay, I don't want to take this any further. They left. I then went and got all my own evidence. I got police files, I got social care files, I got medical records, school documents, and I had the tape recordings from the police. And I contacted a journalist called Andrew Norfolk at the Times newspaper, and I handed him all the evidence over. I told him about my story, and he published my story in August 2013. But I wasn't known as Sammy at that point. I changed my name. I was known as Jessica. And what me and Andrew was able to do, because the amount of evidence that I'd given him, we named, you know, some of these professionals involved. So we named Jahangir Akhtar, we named PT Hassan Ali, and we named the rapist Arshad Hussain. And that was to do with the no prosecution deal, you know, that I spoke of a while ago. And
so you were trying to go to the police one more time, and you saw that nothing was happening. So you just decided to take things into your own hands, and you went to the newspaper, to a journalist who published that story.
Yeah.
Were you anonymous at the time, or you said?
Yes. So my name was Jessica at that point, because I'll be honest, I was terrified. You know, I thought I was going to be killed. I thought, you know, I've got all this information about the police.
Of course.
And my own solicitor actually said to me, don't come forward. He said, you can sue them. He said, you know, you've got enough evidence to sue them. Just take the money and go live your life. But I just had, you know, this kind of bee in my bonnet where I didn't want to just take the money. I wanted people to know what they'd done. I wanted criminal justice. And so, yeah, I said to Andrew, okay, let's publish this story. And it was my story that commissioned the Alexis J report, which is the report known as the Alexis J report, which showed 1,400 children had been groomed, abused, raped, tortured, trafficked, some even murdered. Majority of them was white children, female children, and majority of the offenders were Pakistani Muslim men. It spoke about how people were so terrified to be called racist and Islamophobic, they turned a blind eye. But it also opened the criminal investigation. So I was the first to go on record, which is now known as the biggest criminal investigation into child abuse in our history. It's actually still ongoing. So even though this was, you know, back in 2013, there's that many cases, they're still going through the courts. But my case is now finished because it was the first trial. So it took 3 years to get me into court because the case was that big. There was lots of witnesses. And I'll be honest, I can't even put into words what it was like exposing all of that and all of the backlash that I've had to deal with as a whistleblower. And I still to this day say the 13 years of my activism exposing all of this has been far more difficult than my actual exploitation as a child. I couldn't even tell you how many times people tried to have me arrested and that I've been placed under investigation because there's been that many. They've tried to sue me. When I come forward and, you know, when I did the first exposure, I was looking at 102 years in prison because I was also criminally exploited. So as a child, he was taking me and others to go and commit crimes. So on my 15th birthday, he took me on my first armed robbery. So even though I wasn't the one that went into the post office with a gun, I was the one in the car with a police scanner. I'm still an accessory, so I'm still involved in these crimes. So that's why my solicitor said to me, don't come forward and tell the police what's happened, because you will also go to prison for what you've done. So when my solicitor and the police worked together and looked at how much time I was looking at in prison, it came to 102 years.
Wow.
But I just knew I had to come forward with all this information. So I risked going to prison for that. But we got into court, after 3 years, and 6 of them was found guilty. 2 women as well. There's a lot of women. There's a lot of people that think women can't be involved in these crimes and it's men only. But no, there was 2 white women. They was found guilty as well. But
they were also part of the scandal?
Yes.
But
yeah,
from what I've heard, a lot of the justification from the Pakistani and Bangladeshi perpetrators was because when I talked to Tommy about this, he said that it had something to do with kuffars, with being kuffar. So how were they a part of this? Like, what was their justification for doing this, if you know?
So with Karen McGregor, she was actually a charity worker. So she was a professional working directly with the children. And what she was doing was going into the care homes, bringing the children to the perpetrators.
Got you.
Yeah. So, and then there was Shelley, another woman who was also found guilty. She was actually a victim herself. And then she went on to be a facilitator. So again, she was bringing in the children to have them raped. This happens so often, and not in Rotherham, but throughout the country. There are many women involved. These rapists, they don't just get children involved. It's women. It's absolutely anyone. They don't care who you are, just as long as they're getting what it is they want to get, which of course is exploiting children. So, but in total, they got sentenced to 102 years. So my rapist got 35 years, and that was the highest sentence we'd ever had in history in regards to child sexual exploitation. So he's still in prison. But the thing is, and the very frustrating thing is, they don't serve their full sentences. So when he got sentenced to 35 years, that was only for the sexual crimes and, for the abduction. They wasn't even looking
and the drugs.
to criminalise him for the criminal exploitation of it. And when I asked the police why, because we've got criminal records, which I'll get to in a minute, but they said, well, we've got that many offences for them, we don't even need to question him on that. So, like, for example, when I went into court originally, I think there was something like 14 charges for myself. And they said, well, there's too many. When you put them all together, there was over 100 charges. They said, we've got to knock some off. So I think I ended up with 5 in the end, which he was found guilty on all 5 for. But, to think that such heinous, the most heinous crimes you could ever imagine, and he still won't even serve the full sentence. But some of them, including the women, are no longer in prison. So Karen's now out. Shelley got a suspended sentence. But when I started my activism, I never, kind of went out and thought I want to be an activist. I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about activism. I didn't even know what an activist was. I was so uneducated. I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't even know who my local MP was. So I had to learn kind of as I went along, and it was actually the journalist who kind of helped me educate that. But what I kind of loved about activism was I could see it helping people, and even though I was anonymous, people knew me as Jessica, but I was very well known in my community. So people within the community knew who me and my son was. But, I was kind of making all these changes. So what I kind of as well did in the very beginning, I started a group called the Rotherham Steering Group, and we did a national plan. So we looked at all policies, whether that be the takeaways, the taxes, education, what laws need to be changed. Because when we looked at the Alexis J report, which showed there was a minimum of 1,400 children, it spoke a lot, for example, about the taxi licensing and how many taxi drivers was actually involved in exploiting the children. Mm-hmm. So we looked at all the licensing and we said, okay, let's look at putting CCTV and audio in all the taxis, and that was successful in Rotherham. So we kind of travelled around the country. I met with ministers and, trying to, kind of put that in nationally. And, I was kind of, I suppose, working with all these people, and it was working. So I kind of thought, well, I've got this platform, I've got this knowledge, and I think if you've got that, you should always put it to, towards something positive. So yeah, over the years, I've kind of done, different exposures and kind of learning as I went along, I suppose.
Weren't you trying to promote a law called the Sammy Law?
Yes, so this is another one of my campaigns. So as children, we was actually criminalised for what we was going through, and I'm one of those children. So I've still to this day got a criminal record, and I've just tried to fight it, and I lost. So on my criminal record at the moment, there's an ABH charge. So that would stop me from working with children. So even on like my policies, such as car insurance or home insurance, I have to declare that I've got a criminal record, which could mean my premium is higher. So not only have I been criminalised and blamed for being a victim, I'm financially paying to be a victim. Now, children should never, ever be criminalised for being victims of a crime. If somebody goes out and steals my car, are you going to criminalise me for that, or the person that stole it? Of course, the person that stole it. But in our case, and again, all around the country, children have been criminalised. There's even some that have been sent to prison. I was quite fortunate. They just gave me a criminal record. Some have actually been to prison.
To a juvenile center, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to ask is for us to be pardoned. For me, that's common sense. Now, obviously, I understand that some victims do actually go on to be offenders and very dangerous people. I'm not saying this should be a blanket. We have to look at this individually. But yeah, that is a campaign. But another campaign I've got is I'm trying to strip rapists of their parental rights. So, for example, my rapist, who I have a child to, is in prison for 35 years, but yet Rotherham Council has invited him into my child's life, which means through the family courts, rapists and paedophiles can apply to have contact or full custody of the children born from their crimes, which is just insane. Insane. And, the truth is, these rapists and paedophiles, some of them are winning, and the women are forced to go and play happy families and allow that contact or custody, to their children. So in 2018, I did an exposure on this, and this is actually another occasion when I could have gone to prison because I released a court document. You're not allowed to do that. But I did that because obviously it's supposed to be what's happening. And I knew through my activism work and talking to all these women around the country that this is happening to so many people. And again, I did it with the Times newspaper. But even though this was, a huge exposure, I met with all the ministers, I met with prime ministers as well. This is something that can still happen. So the rapists can still apply for contact and custody. But every single thing, say what I've done and what I've fought for, it has been a fight from the beginning. We should never have to fight like this just to get justice. I mean, even when I've sued Rotherham Council and South Yorkshire Police, we had to fight for the legal aid because they said we couldn't even do that. So I had to campaign for that. I mean, I've been successful. I've also sued my rapist directly many years ago. So, I continue to be successful in certain things, but the fight should never be this hard.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever approached by his family, by the way, since you came forward?
Yeah, so there was 2 arrests because my son was also threatened. They was also sending people to my home. They also tried to have a hit placed on me, so they tried to have me killed. I had to move home. It's, to be honest, it's been absolutely relentless. I've had to have cameras, security gates and everything on my property. But the thing is as well, it weren't just him, his family, and the Muslim community. I mean, there's actually been 2 protests against me as well, so, due to my work. But it's also through the white community. And, what I didn't prepare myself for was the survivors, activists, and the professionals, to harass and stalk me in the ways that they did. And, they weren't just stalking me. They started stalking my children. So at one point, my son had to have a telephone that went directly to the police. This was from a group of people. And again, she actually went on to be a Labour politician, Jane Senior. There was Catherine Kelwick. She was a manager of a charity. I was a witness against her, but she was originally my support worker. I have video footage of her coming to my home. She actually fetched somebody to my home that wanted to cause me harm. They took pictures of my property and uploaded my full address with pictures all over the internet. Now, what you've got to remember is I was a woman that exposed the biggest child abuse scandal in history. I didn't just expose it, I named them. I'm putting them in prison. I'm coming at these people full force, and they're trying to do everything in their power to stop me. And yet the very professionals, again, that I pay to protect, are putting my full address online, knowing full well that could have me and my children killed.
Just so can people understand, because I don't think people understand this. I'm also facing death threats constantly because of what I do, because of the topics I talk about. I don't think people understand the fear of feeling unsafe. Most people who walk down the street, you don't have that feeling. But people like Sammy, people like me, people like Tommy, you don't understand the feeling. It's a feeling of unease, of always looking over your shoulder. You never know if somebody's going to come your way. You never know if somebody's filming you, if your address is going to be doxxed. So can you please elaborate a little bit more on the feeling? What did you feel at the time that this happened?
I remember actually on one of the occasions when I saw the address go online, because one of them, she's actually an activist now, she's called Elizabeth Harper, but she actually did a countdown on her social media page to my address being uploaded. So she did 3, 2, 1, and it went up. And I remember being on the phone to someone, and I was actually being physically sick. And I had to put the phone down and rush to the toilet. Now, when I'm getting all these death threats and things, it is no exaggeration. It was relentless every single day.
Wow.
For a decade. I mean, it's been 13 years now. It's calmed down a lot now, and I've learned to manage and deal with it now. But it's very difficult to even put into words, kind of what that's like, because there was also, and very publicly saying that they was giving my details and my son's details to the perpetrators as well. I then got people contact me saying, Sammy, I know where you live. I know what you're wearing. I know what school your son goes to school with. I know your registration plate. And this was from the other activists. We're meant to be fighting together. And these are the people giving all my information to all these dangerous people. So it kind of just felt I had the whole world coming at me. It was just from every angle. And, it was very difficult as well for the people around me. And, I mean, I don't actually speak to my family anymore, but there was my family members begging me to stop, saying, please, just think about all the impact it's having on the family as well. And, even my dad was saying, you're just going to end up dead. We're going to get a phone call, you're going to be dead. But I just knew I couldn't stop. I just had to keep going, because I knew that this is not only me, it's happening to. And, I heard a saying quite recently, which I think it was a great saying. And it was, wake up every day and fight for a cause that's bigger than yourself. And that is what I've done. And that's, kind of what gets me through and keeps me going. Because, when I get those people contact me saying, Sammy, because of you, I've got justice, and because of you, I came forward. And, I remember there was a woman in her 80s, and she saw me on TV, and she said, Sammy, I was abused when I was young. I've never told anyone. And because I've just seen you on telly, I've gone and got therapy. So when you hear that, and you hear, the policies you're changing and the laws that you've changed, I've been involved in some law changes that not only the first time in our country it's been done, but it's the first time in the world it's ever been achieved. So, when you're a part of that, it's a very addictive feeling. And, you put that fear and that nervousness, to one side. And, as well, though, with the exposures, especially when, we're going up against government, you've got these rich, powerful, in most cases, awful people, but such powerful people that you're about to go up against. And you as that little person, that nobody, to kind of take that on. I'll be honest, it's an adrenaline rush. Listen, so it's a whole mixture of feelings.
Sammy, you don't seem like a little person. You seem like you have a pretty big personality. I have to tell you that. Incredible story. Yes. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever considered during that time of leaving the United Kingdom and going somewhere else?
Yeah, I have. To be honest, it's something I've been thinking about quite recently as well. But I have my children here. I've also got grandchildren. So, for me to kind of just go to another country, I won't like to go without them. And,
Did you say you have grandchildren?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
What? One of my grandsons who I have a close relationship with, he's 3. In fact, he's going to be 4 in a couple of months.
Wow. You really don't look like a grandma, I have to say.
Yes, I am definitely a very young grandma. But what you've got to remember is I also had my son very young.
Right.
As well. So I was 15 when I was pregnant with my son. He's now 24. So my grandson's amazing. So yeah, I won't like to leave them behind. And I don't think they're ready to come with me just yet.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that your therapy was being an activist? Would you say this was your best therapy, despite the threats, despite the risks, despite the backlash from your family, from your, I'm assuming, friends or activists? Despite all that, was that your biggest therapy session?
Oh, absolutely. I always say that campaigning saved my life. And, as I said earlier, there's been many times throughout my life I've been suicidal. And as I was coming forward in exposing Rotherham with the Times newspaper, I just attempted to kill myself as well. So I was in a very dark place. So, yeah, it definitely saved my life, as stressful as it's been.
I have a last question, because I think this was a good conversation. 46 minutes is good. Do you do any sessions at the moment for people who are scared to come forward, girls who are scared, anything like that in the United Kingdom, online, anything like that you're trying to promote? Then now is the opportunity.
Well, what I'm working on at the moment is something called the Rape Gang Inquiry. Now, this Rape Gang Inquiry was set up by MP Rupert Law, and it's funded by the public. So we raised around £600,000, and that is to do our own investigation into, the rape gangs and what's happened here in the UK. And I'm the lead of that. So Rupert Law is our chair. I'm the lead. I've got a great team. We've got Natalie Enderby. So the support worker that I told you about when I first started coming back. So I got back in contact with her. I thought, right, okay, for anyone in the country I can work with, I want to work with her. So she is the lead of our safeguarding. I've got Marlon West on board now. He's the lead of the mental health team. But to cut a long story short, we are working with, survivors, with parents, with whistleblowers, to try and expose, to bring prosecutions, to name the people involved that's been, doing this. And, what I love about our very small team is you have me as a survivor, as a parent, as a whistleblower, but you have Marlon, that is a father. So his daughter was exploited as well. But you have Nat, that is a whistleblower. So we're coming from all 3 angles of this. So we are going to be holding our hearings early next year. And we are going to be releasing evidence, kind of up to that time. And our report will be out next year. So, yeah, keep your eye out and support us on the work that we're doing for that.
So you have a link for a donation site or anything like that that I can put in the link below?
Well, the donations have now closed. So we're not taking any more donations at the moment. I'm not saying we won't ever reopen them. But at the moment, we do have enough to do what we need to do.
Okay. If you ever need my help of posting anything, I would love to help you. Of course, it's a blessed cause. Any book you're thinking about writing?
I've actually wrote one. So my book is called Just a Child. It's another one bestseller as well, which I was really happy about. And as well, what I like about the book, and I'll be honest, I have to be very careful because they are still trials ongoing. So my book had to go through the police and through the National Crime Agency. But at the back of the book, there is information there which can help parents and professionals in kind of spotting signs, in working with children. So I like to see it as an education tool as well.
Beautiful. So we're going to leave the link for that one below as well. And Sammy, I think you're incredible. And really, thank you for the conversation. I hope people were able to learn really a lot about the grooming gang situation. I know it clarified a lot for me. And I'm going to say it for the last time, guys. Subscribe to her channel. It's a new channel, and we need to grow her channel to a pretty big amount of subscribers, because she needs to have a voice online. Being online is, I think, the biggest weapon. Tommy knows this, and Sammy is now going to crush it on social media. Crush it. And I'm going to help you in whatever way I can. Reshare your videos. Try to also react to your videos to send more traffic to your channel. I think you're incredible, Sammy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's much appreciated.
Of course. If you'd like to watch more of my stuff, please check out my channel down below. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that notification button so you can be notified every time I upload new content. If you'd like to support me and the channel financially, you can do that using Buy Me Coffee or Patreon down in the links below. Also, we now have a Discord that you can join down in the link below. And now you can become a YouTube member and enjoy specific YouTube perks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.